So for us drivers, I think as well, initially, yeah, we'll take a bit of time to adjust, and that's why it's very important.
When Max Verstappen says the 2026 regulations aren't a shock, it sounds almost dismissive. When Red Bull says he's taking the risk with us, it sounds cautious, even defensive. Those two statements feel like they should clash. One sounds calm, the other sounds exposed, but they don't contradict each other at all. In fact, they reveal something much more interesting. Max Verstappen and Red Bull are looking at the same uncertainty from completely different pressure positions. By the end of this, you'll understand why Max can afford to sound calm about 2026 and why Red Bull can't. Why 2026 isn't normal uncertainty. Every regulation change creates unknowns, but 2026's scale is unprecedented. New power units, chassis rules, and energy deployment logic arrive without reliable baselines from previous seasons. This isn't about marginal gains. It's about not knowing where the performance floor even is. That's foundational uncertainty affecting how entire organizations plan, hire, invest, and communicate. The ripple effects extend beyond the track. Engineering teams make critical decisions without knowing if their development direction is sound. Budget allocations become strategic gambles rather than informed investments. Personnel decisions carry higher stakes when the rulebook itself is uncharted territory. This separates a regulation tweak from a complete paradigm shift, creating organizational challenges that transcend typical race-to-race pressure. Why drivers and teams feel risk differently. Drivers and teams don't carry the same kind of risk even when they're in the same car. Teams absorb infrastructure risk, reputation risk, and partner risk. They're accountable for timelines, public narratives, and long-term investment logic that extends far beyond any single race or season. Drivers, by contrast, carry execution risk. Their job is narrower and more immediate. They feel pressure in corners, not boardrooms. Their feedback loops are shorter, their concerns more tangible and present. So when uncertainty rises, teams feel it earlier and louder. They're forced to react, to plan, to justify decisions before problems fully materialize. Drivers can afford to wait for the car to turn a wheel, to see how things develop on track before responding. This fundamental difference in temporal orientation shapes how each party experiences and manages the inherent volatility of competition. Why Max can downplay the shock. Max Verstappen isn't pretending uncertainty doesn't exist. He's simply narrowing his operating window to what he can actually control. His public behavior remains remarkably consistent. No future framing, no promises, no panic language. He talks exclusively about driving inputs, not outcomes. About process, not projections. That's not avoidance. It's deliberate control. Max reduces uncertainty by shrinking the timeline he's willing to engage with. If he can't influence the end result yet, he doesn't emotionally invest in it. He compartmentalizes what's actionable from what's merely possible. That's why saying not a shock isn't denial or delusion. It's strategic detachment. He's acknowledging reality without letting it destabilize his focus. By refusing to project forward into scenarios he can't yet shape, he maintains clarity in the present moment where his actual leverage exists. Why Red Bull doesn't have that option. Red Bull doesn't get to narrow the timeline. They have to manage engineers who need clarity about direction and resources. They have to handle partners who want reassurance that their investments are sound. They're overseeing a power unit project that will be judged publicly before it's fully understood or proven. They can't afford to wait for execution to reveal the truth about whether their decisions were correct. They have to commit substantial resources now, in the present, based on incomplete information. So when Red Bull talks about risk, it isn't emotional anxiety or abstract concern. It's structural responsibility embedded in their organizational position. They're not simply reacting to circumstances, they're carrying the weight of decisions that will define their competitive future. Taking the risk with us. The real translation. This line wasn't meant to calm fans. It was meant to rebalance pressure internally. What Red Bull is really saying is this: responsibility is no longer hierarchical. The system is unproven, so accountability has to be shared. That doesn't reduce pressure on Max. It formalizes it. He's no longer just executing advantage. He's helping stabilize uncertainty. And that changes the relationship, quietly but fundamentally. It shifts him from operator to architect, from beneficiary of a proven structure to co-builder of something still taking shape. The burden doesn't lighten, it deepens. What was once certainty becomes collaboration under conditions of doubt, and Max now carries not just performance expectations but systemic ones. How the driver-team dynamic has shifted in dominant eras. The equation is simple. The team delivers performance, and the driver maximizes it. In 2026, that order flips. The system is incomplete, and performance emerges through interaction. Feedback becomes more valuable than results early on. That elevates Max's role without requiring him to change how he behaves. He doesn't need to lead emotionally. He leads by clarity, by compressing uncertainty faster than the system can on its own. Why this environment actually fits Max. There's a pattern across Verstappen's career that often gets missed. He performs best when expectations are honest, systems are unfinished, and execution matters more than narrative. He struggles least when there's nothing to defend. 2026 removes the illusion of certainty. That doesn't unsettle him. It simplifies his job. He doesn't need dominance. He needs a problem he can work inside. This is important to say clearly. This is not a loyalty test. It's not a countdown. It's not a signal of dissatisfaction or future moves. Nothing about Max's calmness points outward. It points inward, toward how he processes pressure. And nothing about Red Bull's caution points toward doubt in him. It points toward the reality of building something from scratch in public. Why the headlines? Miss the point. Headlines frame this as tension, but there's no conflict here. Max sounds calm because uncertainty doesn't change how he operates. Red Bull sounds cautious because uncertainty changes everything they're responsible for. Both responses are rational. They're just aimed at different problems. So yes, Max Verstappen can say 2026 isn't a shock. And yes, Red Bull can say he's taking the risk with them. Both statements are true because they're talking about different kinds of pressure. In Formula One, the calmest voice isn't always the one with the least at stake. Sometimes it's the one with the clearest job. And if you're Orange Army, you already recognize this version of Max. The one who doesn't get louder when uncertainty grows. He just gets narrower.